Hello and welcome to Life University's celebration of Black History Month with a webinar on Black mental health. My name is Dr. Harrison Davis and I'm the Chief Diversity Officer for Life University. I am joined by two of my colleagues where we're going to talk about Black wellness and Black mental health. But this is a series part of the Justice for All webinar series where we recognize various cultures on campus and throughout the Metro Atlanta area. We are taking a serious approach to diversity and inclusion at Life University by recognizing everyone, all holidays, all cultures. And in this particular series, we're honoring the theme for Black History Month this year at Life University, which happens to be on Black wellness and mental health. So we're going to get started. Let me introduce my two guests. We have Dr. Chandra Johnson, a very good friend of mine and classmate from grad school. Chandra Johnson is a core faculty member in the School of Counseling at Walden University and the owner of Greater Living Counseling and Consulting in Decatur, Georgia. She is a licensed professional counselor in Georgia, certified grief educator, certified grief counseling specialist, and an EMDR trained clinician. That is very good. Her interests include focusing on grief and depression in Black males, the overall psychosocial health of Black males, particularly in the cultural, psychological, and social aspects of death and dying. Dr. Johnson earned her master's degree from Howard University in DC and her PhD in counselor education from the University of Arkansas. Welcome to the webinar, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Thank you.
Also, we have Dr. Al Sutherland. He goes by Dr. Al. Dr. Alvin Sutherland Jr. is a practicing therapist and owner of the Sutherland Center in Douglasville, Georgia. He provides in-home counseling to 13 counties in the Metro Atlanta area and telemental health counseling for the entire state of Georgia. He has offered services for individuals, couples, and families since 2007. During this time, the Sutherland Center has counseled over 500 families. He facilitates a 6-hour ethics continuing education workshop, and he conducts workshops for churches, school systems, and other mental health professionals. Welcome to the webinar, Dr. Al. So I have some questions for you guys, as this is a panel discussion. I want to hear about you, your expertise about things. So start off with a very important question. So over the past few years, we all have experienced some potentially stressful situations. There was COVID-19. We're in year 2 of COVID-19 and the pandemic in March. Now there are over 974,000 deaths in the US alone. We had shelter in place, the world shut down, kids were trying to do remote learning, there were layoffs, and now we're experiencing some inflation. Let's not forget about the murder of George Floyd by the police officer, Ahmaud Arbery, who was confronted and attacked by 3 white men who he was ultimately killed when he was jogging through a neighborhood. You know, this is just to name a few of those racially charged violent incidents that we have witnessed over the past. And let's not forget the assault on the US Capitol by domestic terrorists who were trying to stop the current president from taking office. Scores of people are trying to ban books that teach us about US history and the role of slavery, Jim Crow laws, and the history of violence against Black and brown citizens in the United States. With all of this going on for the past few years, and that's a lot, how are Black folks holding up? How are we dealing with some of this trauma, which is affecting us a little bit different than the typical person? So tell me, Dr. Al, what have you seen with some of your Black clients, or even your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that is definitely quite a bit that is going on. And I would say large portion of the clientele I see, and just thinking about it in general, is how have people prior to this amount of adversity in their life, how do they normally deal with adversity when they've had it before these many events that you just spoke about? From all those different events, how do people normally respond? And so I'll speak directly to the people who are actively participating here today and who will hear this and watch this at a later date, how do you normally respond to adversity? How do you respond to difficulties in your life? Some of the difficulties and adversity we know we experience, some may be tiny and some may be gargantuan, larger than life. And usually it's really not about the problem that we have, because if we can continue to allow ourselves to praise the problem, it will make it even bigger than what it actually is. So my question is, how do you normally respond to adversity, to difficulties, to trials and tribulations that you have in your life? I know personally for me, one of the things that I've adopted is from every difficulty comes a new discovery. And whenever there's a difficult time in my life, and I've had quite a few in my life, and even that right now I'm experiencing a difficult moment, I'm in search for what is the new discovery from this difficult time that I'm about to experience, that I'm experiencing right now. I can even think to my company. I started my company in 2007, which is 15 years ago. In the midst of a difficult family event going on in my personal life is how the Sutherland Center was created. And then, and every single time that I've had a difficult time, when I think back in middle school, high school, and even college, from every difficult time, there's always been a new discovery. So I'll ask everyone, whether you experience directly or indirectly the traumatic events that have taken place, how do you respond to the adversity in your life? What is in you that allows you to overcome those difficult times that you've experienced? Because this won't be the last time that you experience them. If we continue to live this life that we live, which is living by faith, living in faith every day, we're going to have these difficult times. And what works best for you is to kind of pay attention to yourself. What is inside of you? What is the resilience? What is the strength that is inside you that allow you to overcome these difficult times? Whatever that is that you found when you look in that mirror, continue to press forward through those difficult times and rely upon that strength that is inside of you to keep going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Al. I like that focus on optimism and persistence and perseverance in overcoming some challenges. And although these are some great challenges that we all have incurred over the past few years, Chandra Johnson, what are your thoughts about how are Black folks holding up? How are we doing? Dr.
Davis. I can say, I'm just gonna say, I don't think we're not okay. We're not okay. As a Black woman, Black men, a lot of my work, my interest, my passion involves Black males, but today I want to speak on Black men and Black women. I don't think we're okay, right? We've encountered a lot. The racial reckoning. I mean, you ran down a list of things, but
that's just in the last 2 years.
The last 2 years, exactly. And even events that happened today, right? Kind of sparked an emotional response in some of us that reminded me that I'm not okay. I'm not as okay as I think I am. And we've been taught to fake it till we make it.
Yeah.
And as Black women, Black men, don't let them see you sweat. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Yep.
And so because of that, we put on this front sometimes, and I'm generalizing obviously, but we'll put on a front, we'll put on a face to go out in public. And sometimes inside, we might be empty, we might be numb, a number of things that we could be feeling inside. So, and the message that I want to share is that it's okay to not be okay, right? And let somebody know. And that's why we're here today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. You two have provided, the intro is wonderful. It's like I can shut it down now. But you mentioned some trauma that we are experiencing and some trends or habits within the Black community about how we have historically dealt with traumatic situations and with a lot of perseverance as well. But it still takes a heavy toll on us. And a lot of this has been tough. And as a father, of an 11-year-old. I mean, we have ourselves and the adults, our colleagues and friends, but then the kids, the Black kids, I have struggled at times trying to explain certain things. So I can only imagine what the kids are going through and some of the worrying of the parents. But all of this is about how we respond to traumatic situations. So Dr. Al, can you tell us about what are some typical responses people experience, if not trauma, just dealing with tough situations, getting laid off, grandmothers in the hospital, they're worried about their own health. They know, I don't know about you guys, I know people who've died. I know people who have had relatives to die. So there seems to be death in the air. What type of response are people experiencing? Can you help us to understand what does depression, no, I'm sorry, what does anxiety look like for Black folks?
Great point, great point. And what we learned in anxiety is a natural, helpful response to a short-lived reaction that we have. And if we think that anxiety is not normal, it is. It is one of the things or the emotions that we have of being human. It is a part of the process that kind of helps us understand like this situation, man, whether you finna speak in public or whether you're ready to study for a test or stay up for a test that you didn't study for, and you're ready to take that nervousness, that uneasiness, that apprehension that comes with the anxiety is a natural part of life. Some of it is designed to help us respond better to those situations. The thing about it is when you have those emotions, whether it's anxiety or any other emotion, sometimes they want to cause us to isolate inside of our own head or just isolate physically. And as well as you can, embrace those people who care about you, that you care about, whether your colleagues, your family, or friends, and really just kind of submerge yourself around those people who care about you instead of sitting there being caught up in your own head, sitting there isolating yourself by yourself. Because what's going to happen, we all know in this field about these ruminating thoughts or these ants, these automatic negative thoughts we have, and we'll sit there and have these conversations in our mind like, man, everybody's around me is dying, or I'm gonna die, and all these things going on. If we allow those things to consistently happen, we're gonna feel the pain of that. But understand, even as parents, because I'm a parent myself to my children, to help our children understand it is okay to feel anxious sometimes. Anxiety is okay. It's a natural flow of the emotions that we have. And the thing about it, if we overestimate it and make it much, much, much bigger than it is, for example, if we see one lion attacking us, we got possibly a shot. However, if we overestimate it and view that one lion as 10, we don't have a shot. And that sometimes can make us more anxious to the situation. As parents, we just talk to our children, listen to them. How can I support you in what's going on right now? What if we just take a moment to just sit here together and we hug chest to chest? And that a warm embrace can help alleviate some of the anxiousness that someone is feeling. It's all about making sure we connect to the family and the significant people in our life, that we don't have to go through it by ourselves. And I was just having conversations with some of my fraternity brothers at Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and some of the men that I mentor, the Council Brothers of Atlanta, just sharing with them, because these are all men, and men at time when we have moments of anxiety, when we feel that we're all alone, we'll isolate, and strongly encourage them to call each other. Don't just text each other, send each other a group me message, but call each other and let your brother hear your voice, that he's there for you, that he's there for you, and you're there for him, to make sure to kind of alleviate some of those times, and we kind of normalize it. It's a natural flow of life, but connect with those around you and important to you.
So I like you talking about, you mentioned the anxiousness and the worrying, excessive worrying, and the thoughts, that are going through your head, and it causes a lot of disruption for us in trying to make good decisions and function on a daily basis. But your suggestion is to seek out support, or even identify the support that you might already have, that you don't have to go through it by yourself. You don't have to tackle this thing alone. And so that's something that perhaps we can do a much better job in the future, as you talk specifically about Black men, seeking out some help. That is some wonderful advice. So Dr. Johnson, tell us about how Black folks experience depression, particularly regardless of the trigger or the stressor. What are some things that you can tell us about how to recognize it and what we can possibly do about it?
Wow. Interestingly, I have this conversation with one of my colleagues. We have this conversation often about depression in our Black clients. And interestingly, if I bring up or approach the topic of depression, sometimes I get resistance. Like a lot of my, well, I'm generalizing, but
Of course.
many of my Black clients will be more likely to entertain the idea of anxiety. But when you say, maybe that sounds like depression, right? You're telling me that you're sleeping more. You're telling me that you've lost interest in a lot of things that you used to enjoy. You're telling me that you're avoiding phone calls. You don't even return text messages anymore. And people are, calling to check on you and stopping by your house, and you're not answering the door to let people in, right? You're late to work now. Like you don't even care if you get to work on time. Some of that sounds like it could be depression, right? We know there's some overlap between anxiety and depression, but some of that sounds like depression. And I know particularly in my Black male clients, when I mention depression, I don't think I'm depressed. I don't think that's what it is.
Denial.
Yeah. And even in my Black female clients, but we know that depression is something that's often ignored in our communities because of the way that we're socialized. Don't let them see you sweat. Black women, I want to let you know, it's okay to take that cape off, right? Strong Black woman syndrome. Yes, take it off, right? Because we see what exactly what Dr. Al was saying, right? Support, right? And self-care is what I was hearing in what he was saying. And so I want to just emphasize that it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. And depression is not a sign. Even my own family, my own father, right? It's like I know that he suffered from depression over the years, and my daddy will tell me I'm not weak, and that's his perception, right? We're talking about an 82-year-old Black man, and that is his perception that if you say that you are suffering from depression or you have symptoms or signs of depression, then in some kind of way that means that you're weak, that you're inadequate, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
Thank you. And so it sounds like sometimes we fail to recognize the wounds. I'm coming right to you, Dr. L. We fail to recognize the wounds that are there that we are experiencing. And you mentioned, Dr. Johnson, we've been socialized or told by our parents and our communities, the Black women too, toughen up. You can't do that. Put on this cape and you do what you got to do. You don't have time to be depressed. And that adds to the issues that we're already experiencing. So Dr. Al, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, I want to add, and Dr. Johnson, you just spoke on it. We know and we learned that depression and its fraternal twin is anxiety. They kind of go hand in hand. They flow together with a lot of people that they experience. From my understanding, the first time that depression supposedly entered the world, in one of my favorite books, there's this young man and he was having a conversation with his dad, and his dad gave him and his wife some specific instructions about the land and the property and all the acreage of land that was given to him. And when the son and his wife had a situation, had an exchange, when there was some disobedience going in there, and his father told him that he pretty much got to till the land because the land was just naturally producing. It was really fertile land. And when he realized that his dad wanted him to now work the land in order for the land to produce by the sweat of his brow, that's one of the instances when depression, he's like, oh, have mercy. This land naturally produced fruit and I was able to eat good and my family was good. And now I must get down with my hands and my back and till this land and dig and to create fruit for my food, for my family. That's when depression began to enter into the world, when the man realized his responsibility to it. And those things just kind of float. And that's where we really got to do the work to maximize that we are connecting and staying engaged with those around us. Because he believed he was all alone, and he's not. A lot of times we as men and the women, we get this all alone mindset that I need to kind of take care of everything and take care of this, and I got this, and I got this. And it is okay, just like Dr. Johnson says, to extend your hand and allow someone else to pull you up. I don't know if you guys ever seen, which I know you have, there's this picture, a black picture, like the hand is reaching down. And that was a part of that's a big part of our culture. We are supposed to pull each other along. You don't have to do it alone. And we really get the families and the clientele that we speak to help them understand you don't have to go alone at this. If you choose to, you can. However, we understand that one man is a force, but a group of men together is a movement, and we move together. We don't have to work in isolation. And I just want to add that part to it as well. I appreciate it.
No problem. So you just talked about,
I'm sorry. Dr. Davis, can I share one thing?
Absolutely.
Piggyback again, what Dr. Al was saying. When people ask us how we're doing, our typical response is, "Oh, I'm good. I'm fine." And I have a quick story. My father was in the hospital. This was many years ago. My father was in the hospital, and I was walking out to my car, walking through the parking lot, and there were two women standing in the parking lot smoking cigarettes. And me, just walking, and instead of just saying hi, hello, I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" And I kept walking as I'm saying this. The woman stopped. She said, "I'm not doing well." And she said, "My brother's dying." And then she proceeded to tell me that her mother and father died like within 3 years of each other. And she went on. And I had to stop in my tracks because I wasn't prepared for her to tell me the truth, right? I thought she was going to say, "Oh, I'm fine," and let me keep going about my business. So it has made me very mindful. When I ask people how they're doing, I really want to know. And I'm prepared to listen.
That's a great story. I love that, Dr. Johnson. So not only, as Dr. Al and you mentioned, we got to reach out and not be isolated, lean on our support system, but the rest of us have to be available to hear them and to see them and to talk to that friend or that coworker or that family member and really mean it when we ask, "Brother, sister, how are you doing?" We got to take time out to actually listen to them since they are taking a bold step to reveal their story to us. I like that. That is a great story. And I hope I can allow me to share that in the future when I talk to other groups. But as you guys talked about isolation and going through things by yourself, and sometimes the people around them aren't always available or wanting to help or to hear, that has contributed to some realities within the Black community. One of those realities is suicide among Black Americans is a national public health crisis, particularly for Black youth and young adults aged 15 to 24. Over the past decade, the suicide rate has risen approximately 35%. With that particular population has outpaced other groups when historically the suicidal rates with Black individuals have been very low in the past. And now suicide is the second leading cause of death for that particular group, young Black adults 15 to 24. What is going on with that, and what type of information can you provide us in the audience, as many of the students fall into that age range who are listening to us today? Dr. Al, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, and it is definitely challenging.
And it's alarming.
Yeah, definitely challenging too. That a lot of that is possibly the school-related stress and the pressures, whether it is internally or externally from the school and meeting demands of, man, I got to get this paper done. I got to take this test. I got to take this test. And then especially, I remember, I was a middle school counselor at Paul D. West Middle School years ago. And I remember we used to hear, during the CRCT time, the criterion reference test they had at the time. And I remember there was on the news, and I don't watch the news too much. I happened to catch it that time, that a principal in his office killed himself one morning during those testing times. It was just a tough time. The school amount of pressure that is on the youth and the adults and alike is just overwhelming, extremely overwhelming. And however, the process is, with all that school-related stress, if there's school-related stress and then you come home and there's home-related stress, where are you to go? You can't get into the school and do the schoolwork because it's stress there. And you go home, if your parents don't appear to be hearing you and understanding your perspective, what are you to do? And that could possibly be contributing factors to it. So as parents, myself, and I know you're a parent as well, we can support our children and those who are in the school system by reducing and lessening the amount of pressure they experience. I know for me, one of the things I ask my children to do is make sure that you are taking a walk outside every day. Make sure you get out the building every day. Take a moment to find something to celebrate. And we almost weekly find something to celebrate. We're like, what we celebrate today? To reduce the amount of stress. It is okay if you don't make 100 on everything, an A on everything. You know, sometimes school is the only place in the world where you can fail, but actually they give you a chance to repeat and do it again. And they put so much pressure on them. And as the family, whoever is in your environment, whoever's in your sacred hoop, whoever's in your circle, they can support you by kind of reducing that level of stress. If everybody around you is putting stress on you, where are you to go? And that's usually where people will find they start to drink and drug because of that level of stress that they're experiencing. It's like being pressed on every side. And people pressing you from the right and from the left and on the bottom, all around. It's like, where am I supposed to go, man? It's like, this is too much. And we don't know how to deal with all that pressure. We know pressure busts pipes, but pressure also, heat and pressure creates diamond. Perhaps that amount of pressure is helping formulate you to be your absolute best. However, if it's too much pressure, it can realm into we know about all that anxiety and depression. If it's too much going for too long, it pushes into the clinical realm of being clinically depressed. And we don't need that. And if we recognize in the school systems, there are school counselors, there are school psychologists, there are school social workers. I've done works in schools and making sure they're reaching out to the kids and having everyone be aware of, just because the kids who are acting out, we pay attention to them. But what about the kids that sitting in class and don't say anything? They go to the clinic, they're talking about my stomach hurt, or they don't want to go to school, and they're experiencing that anxiety. That's school-related stress. And we got to find a way, even in the schools in colleges, university, they go to the student health center. How are the schools paying attention to the level of stress that the students are experiencing? Even when I was in middle school, we used to have to make sure I was the 8th grade counselor, we split the 6th grade. We have to make sure that the teachers for math is not given an assignment, and then the English is given an assignment, then the science is given an assignment, and they got all these assignments and these projects due at the same time. Yeah. They had to make sure they collaborate to reduce some of that level of stress that the kids are experiencing. And if the people don't collaborate to look out for them, it's going to be too much for them. So everybody, we hear people talk about the village mentality. I kind of believe in it. So if I can influence the village, I don't have much for it. I want to build an influence. If everybody in education and the parents, as they're collaborating to understand, and let's look at the amount of workload and schoolwork that kids have. How can we make sure they have moments
to breathe? Gotcha. So it sounds like you describe situations of reality that some of these young folks don't have a way to escape, you know, from a lot of these pressures. And I would even add toxic environments also. And then that contributes to them wanting to find a way to get out of it, you know, an unhealthy way to deal with it. And perhaps that's why one of the reasons why so many young Black youth have made decisions to commit or even complete suicide. Dr. Johnson, what do you have to say about that topic?
Yeah, I just, excuse me. I just wanted to just hone in on some of the statistics that you mentioned, Dr. Davis, because, and I talked about this in a previous workshop, but between 2001 and 2017, Black females between the ages of 13 and 19, we saw a 182% increase in
Wow.
deaths by suicide. 182%. For Black males in that same time frame, for that same age, we saw a 60% increase in deaths by suicide. So it's real. And
Yes.
there was a study, Dr. Nedstad, he's an assistant professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins. He did a study during the early pandemic in Maryland, and it was on suicide mortality in Maryland. And what he found was that deaths by suicide among Black people is increasing at a much higher rate than it is among white people. So we are definitely seeing more Black people who are dying by their own hands, right? And you know, Dr. Al was a school counselor between 2015 and 2017. Georgia led the nation in deaths by suicide among teens.
I didn't know that.
I had no idea either, right? I think it was like 5.8 per 100,000. But Georgia led the nation. I think it was followed by like Texas, Florida, and I think Ohio. But so this is significant. It's a
crisis.
It's a crisis. It is. And we think about Miss USA recently.
Yeah.
Chesley Chris,
Yes.
30 years old, and Ian,
lawyer, MBA,
yeah.
Miss USA.
Like who on the outside, she's got it going on, and she was beautiful, right? What could possibly? But from what I understand, she suffered from depression, right? And Regina King's son, Ian Alexander Jr., 26 years old, about to launch his music career.
So what can you say to people who are listening right now? They may know someone, or perhaps they have some growing suicidal ideation, you know, because I'm overwhelmed by the statistics with that. And I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. So in addition to seeking help, because we want to emphasize that, what more can you add to that?
I do want to say that having suicidal ideations does not mean that you are going to complete suicide. So again, asking someone, if you're talking about a friend or a loved one, asking them about it is not going to necessarily result in them going and doing it. And I know sometimes we're reluctant to address it because we think if we say something that's going to encourage people to do it. Quite the opposite, right? If you have someone in your circle that you suspect or things are different, please ask, right? Ask them how they're doing. Let them know that you are concerned about them. And again, because we have to go through that informed consent and confidentiality with our clients. And we say, if you tell me that you're going to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else, I have to breach confidentiality. But I let my clients know, just if you mention that, I've thought about suicide, that doesn't mean I'm going to breach confidentiality. Let's talk about that, right? But if I have reasonable suspicion or suspect that you might actually do it, that's something different. That is something totally different.
So earlier, you two mentioned some strategies, some things, and you mentioned self-care. I just want to shift a little bit to being a little bit more proactive about things. So Dr. Al, what does self-care look like for Black men and women, and what type of suggestions can you offer for those individuals who are under a lot of stress, experiencing some depression, unmanageable anxiety? So tell us, what can the Black folks do for self-care? Because there are a lot of people in our community, that concept is foreign. Self-care is to sacrifice and give yourself and take care of others, particularly your family, and keep going regardless of how much it hurts you. Tell us about self-care for Black people, Dr. Al.
Wow. It is definitely amazing how we hear those concepts, those ideas. Let me say, I'm gonna take care of me for you, and I need you to take care of you for me.
Oh, can you say that one more time? I like that.
I'm gonna take care of me for you, and I need you to take care of you for me. The goal is longevity and sustainability as a family. You know, the work that I do, my wife and I, we do couples therapy together. It's all about strengthening families and allowing families to connect again and again and again. And when you think about a lot of the things that we're experiencing, it's just a fragment of the family at times. And we're talking about self-care, and I have my own fabulous definition of self-care, and I'll share it possibly at a moment. When we think about self-care, if you can create your world where you are just naturally able to have moments to breathe, you don't have to create a whole new set of things to do. Think of it like this. On average, people take about 2 minutes to brush their teeth in the morning. On average, people take about 2 minutes to brush their teeth at night. That is 4 minutes that you could find a way to include whatever kind of self-care, and self-care is about regenerating, replenishing, rejuvenating the mind, body, spirit, and soul while having fun. If you could find 4 minutes, whether you brushing your teeth, you know, while I brush my teeth, I may read a book. While I brush my teeth, I may pray and meditate. While I brush my teeth, I may do calf raises. While I brush my teeth, I may walk up and down the stairs. While I brush my teeth, I may watch some inspiration on the YouTube, whatever it is. If you could find 4 minutes, ideally you want more, but if you could find 4 minutes to find a way, let me find a way to rejuvenate, replenish my body, my mind, my spirit, and soul while having fun. Because if you know, life is a heavy lift, and we got to carry it, and it's weighing us down. And if we're not physically able to carry life, it's gonna weigh us down. And then who is gonna take care of your children? Who is gonna be there to read with your children, to pray with your children, to walk your daughter down the aisle? Who is going to be there for them when you see your children become president of the United States, become CEOs of companies, when you see your children become therapists? Who's going to be there? The best thing that you can do is for the benefit of you is to take care of you, for you, take care of yourself for your family, get the family back to the table, and where we create moments where we go and walk and talk. In my family, we walk. One of the things my wife and I, we do every day, we go and take a walk, and they kind of give a chance to debrief about the day, and it gives us a chance to walk and hold hands and do flirtatious stuff all over again.
Be in the
day.
sunshine.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Get that sunlight that we need. Yeah. And if you well as you can, you create a day where your self-care is a natural part of the day. If not, you know, incorporate drinking lots of water, hydration, 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 keep your body hydrated, get lots of sleep. Get that sunlight.
I could, but continue.
Get plenty of sleep, get plenty of sleep. Yeah, the body needs the sleep to regenerate itself. Your body, when we don't get enough sleep, we're susceptible to having headaches, being more irritable, annoyed, easily frustrated. Every time somebody says something to you, you're ready to bite their head off. You still need to sleep. And all those things are part of the self-care that you just include a part of your normal part of your day. I'll say it again. I'm gonna take care of me for you, and you take care of you for me.
I like that. I'm going to put that on some shirts. So Dr. Johnson, tell us about self-care and self-compassion that we can practice a little bit more in the Black community.
I love everything Dr. Al said. And I especially like that he emphasized that basically it's what is going to bring you joy, peace, happiness. And it's something that you're doing for yourself. And it doesn't have to be, you know, sometimes we think of self-care, it's like, oh, going to a spa and getting a massage. Dr. Al just told us it could be while you're brushing your teeth, you know, do some calf lifts or read or, you know, meditation. It doesn't have to be anything major or big, you know, even as simple as, you know, at lunchtime, how many of us, you know, really probably don't even take a lunch break? Right? Or we may go pick up lunch and we eat at our desk, right? Just taking 30 minutes to turn the computer off and eat your lunch and enjoy your lunch, right? Mindful eating, someone told me about before, mindful eating. Sometimes we eat our food so fast, we don't even know if we really enjoyed it or not. because we just woofed it down, you know, and being okay, right? And especially as Black women, sometimes we think that it's selfish if we take care of ourselves. But we've all heard the iron sharpens iron. We've all heard the analogy about the oxygen mask. As Dr. Al said, you can't be there to walk your child down the aisle if you don't take care of yourself. So consider it, something, a gift that you're giving to your loved ones when you do take care of yourself. So that you're not thinking that it's something selfish. It's necessary.
Gotcha.
It's necessary.
Thank you. And I'm taking a class right now where, of course, I've practiced self-care and talk about it with others as well. But this whole new term that I recently learned, self-compassion, just being good to yourself, being kind to yourself, that can go a long way, incorporating some of the ideas that we just heard from Dr. Johnson and Dr. Al, but also avoid feeling selfish about taking care of you. But you can't expect others to do for you what you refuse to do for yourself. So that's the message that I got out of that. So as many of our—
I'm sorry, can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
Self-care, boundaries, and setting boundaries. This is something that has come up
What are boundaries?
pretty often with clients, and especially around work, right? And not being able to set those boundaries. So I know, Dr. Davis, when we were in training, it was like, start the way you want to finish, right?
Yep.
Even with your clients. If you're not the therapist that's available 24 hours a day, don't start off, right, giving your personal number, making yourself available 24 hours a day, unless you're going to finish that way, right?
Gotcha.
So start with boundaries and with work, right? I always tell people, some of us, we love what we do. Sometimes it doesn't feel like work, but then there are others who don't necessarily love what they do and want to be released to do something else, right? We work, majority of us work to provide a service so we can collect a paycheck. That's why we go.
That's a job.
So those are your boundaries. If your work hours are 8:30 to 5, you work from 8:30 to 5. And then at 5 o'clock, you go home and you enjoy your family, right? You enjoy your personal time. That's your self-care. But boundaries, and even sometimes we have to do that with family members to take care of ourselves. We have to step back, and it's hard. So.
And friends too. So Dr. Al, what can you tell us about what it looks like when someone has fluid or weak boundaries and how that can contribute to some of their anxiety and depression, particularly within the Black community?
Oh yeah, true. If you aren't really protecting, or I call it minding your mind, and allowing other people to, what do you say, they walking all over you, it's not going to work out too well for you when those happens. Boundaries are definitely a part of the process of being able to say no. I've met many people who clearly tell you, man, I have a hard time saying no. Yeah. And my follow-up real quick, my joke is, let me get 3 pounds of $100. And I'm waiting for them to say, all right, go ahead, they're going to give it to me. And the thing about, setting boundaries, there's so many different places where people just don't have boundaries. Most employers don't allow you to have boundaries. If you're salaried at a particular place, meaning you got to work, you getting paid whether you work 8 hours or you work 24 hours. And a lot of those places, I know I'm gonna speak about the school system, because the school system where I know a lot of stuff going on. In the school system, because the educators are salaried, the administrators will send text messages and send emails at 9:34 at night, and then expecting you to reply. And then the educators, they get all their emails to their cell phones, and it's constantly buzzing from all. When do you cut it off? When are you choosing to say, hold on, this is family time from 4 to 9. Yep. This is family time from 4 to 9, family time. When you think about family, those 25 hours, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, from 4 to 9 is how you create the nation. Because the kids are usually at work for about 12 years, from pre-K to 12th grade, and the adults are usually at work. And the time for family to connect with each other and build upon their resilience and build upon their self-care time is those hours of 4 to 9. And a lot of families don't make time for whatever reason. They don't make time or have the time to have family time. They try and make up for it over the weekend, and now they're running all over, and families struggle to find a way to get back to the dinner table. If you set the boundary that we're going to eat dinner together at least once a month, once a week, whatever it is, to get the family to sit down together and we're going to have a table topic. Today's topic is, what is your greatest fear? And we get the family members to share. All that is a part of setting boundaries where family time is a boundary. No cell phones, no electronics. And we put those boundaries in place, and which is usually the parents are putting those things in place for the benefit of family to alleviate some of that anxiety that the kids are experiencing, the school pressure, and they want to kill themselves and engage in all kind of things. Those things are part of the boundary process. When the adults have firm boundaries, because family is still the priority, the kids can model that. The parents have modeled it, and now the kids can see they're the role models for it. And now they learn, oh yeah, we need to have boundaries. We need to have time to have prayer time, to meditate time, to understand. Let's go take a walk time. Let's drink and stay hydrated time. Let's find things to celebrate, and let's let everybody know what's going on. We celebrating together. Mm-hmm. If we don't put those things in place, our boundaries will continue to be loose, and it's going to cause us to feel more anxious because we keep saying yes. We know our plate is full. We know we have too much going on, and yet we keep saying yes. Yes,
absolutely.
Yes, it's too much, and it becomes overwhelming. It is like, man, please just leave me alone. It's too much.
Gotcha. Thank you. And Dr. Johnson for bringing up the boundaries, and Dr. Al telling us what it looks like with the families and when we don't have boundaries in the workplace. But Dr. Johnson, quickly, can you tell us about what that might look like for college students who may have fluid or loose or weak boundaries?
Yes. So college students, my gosh, yes, it's hard. It's hard juggling because you're juggling school. Some of you are working, some of you have families. It's hard. You have a lot on your plate. And we always, especially as counselors, we emphasize, and I teach counseling, right? Dr. Allen and I used to work together as well, Dr. Davis and I. So, we taught counseling for years, and we always emphasize and stress to our students, self-care, take care of yourself. And that is going to involve setting boundaries, even as a student, right? And it's not all work and no play. Right? Yes, you have things that you have to get done. You have assignments, you might have discussion boards and things like that, but you also need to strike that balance where you do give yourself that time to connect with other people and engage with other people. But then there also come times where you do have to set that boundary with friends or family who may not understand why you can't go, camping this weekend, because you have a midterm or to study for, or a test to study for. So it is delicate and it's not easy, but it's so necessary. And also for students, life is going to happen. As Dr. Al said earlier, as long as we continue on this journey called life, things are going to happen. And when they do, stop and make sure you take care of yourself. Right?
Absolutely.
I don't know I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but this is what I tell my students. Like, school is always going to be here. That's the beautiful thing. School is not going anywhere. Like the pandemic knocked us, beat us up the past 2 years. People were coming to class with COVID. People had buried 2 family members the week before, and we're still trying to turn in papers and still trying to stay in class. And I'm like flabbergasted, like, why? This is where that boundary comes in. You take care of yourself. You're first, right? School will be here.
Absolutely. I like that. It's going to always be there. You can always come back. But if you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to achieve the goals that you want by earning that degree that you're working so hard for? So thank you for telling us about that. And I also want to remind the viewers who are out there, you can put questions in the chat section of the Zoom webinar, and I'm going to get to them real soon. So as many of our listeners are listening to you guys, and you give us some wonderful suggestions. Many of them are contemplating going to a therapist, a counselor for the first time. And many of the people who are listening right now, they're part of a minority group in our country, and they don't know what to expect. So can you tell us about culturally competent therapists and what the client should be looking for with a therapist? What type of characteristics or services might they offer for many of these individuals who have never gone to a therapist and they don't know what to expect? Dr. Al, can you start us off on that?
Well, I think of, pretty much all, and I'm using the absolute all therapists have similar training. And we learned all these different modalities and approaches to connect with our clientele and help our clientele feel that they are being heard and understood. You definitely should go, when you go to a therapist, you should feel that you're being heard and understood. And having someone to kind of talk through the challenges that you're experiencing. A competent and culturally competent therapist is one who has an understanding of your values, your morals, your beliefs, understanding of your philosophies about life. And we learn all these different modalities. However, the therapist that sits before you, one human being sitting in front of another, they don't know you. We've studied all these different modalities and approaches for how to understand the emotions of people and the thought processes of people and the behaviors of people. However, they haven't learned your thought process, your emotions, and your understanding with your behavior. But they're going to be learning you as you are learning them, and you're educating them more about how you view the world and your perspective of the world at the same time. Now, if you go to a therapist who looks just like you in skin tone and understanding your process, whether you go to, if you're a man and you go to a man therapist, or you're a woman and you go to a woman therapist, or you're a child in adolescence and you go to a therapist who is an adult, all that is dealing with the cultural perspective of it, because they have to have an understanding of the things that men experience, or understand the things that women experience, or understand what children and adolescents experience. And you're still educating them. We don't want to go in with what I call SAM, speculation, assuming, and mind reading, that this therapist knows everything. They will learn a lot about the approaches of doing therapy. However, they don't know your world. And you're educating them about your world, about the onset, frequency, and duration of the behaviors that you're experiencing in your life. You're still educating them, and they're going to provide even more hope for you that your future will be much better than your current situation. They're going to provide great hope for you to help you understand that the things that happened to you when you were in 8th grade is not happening right now. You may at times have moments where you feel it in your body, because the body remembers what the mind struggles to forget. You may have moments where you feel it right now. They're going to help you develop that hope even more, which we know hope is healing our people every day, to give you more hope to see your future as much better than it was in the past, to see yourself much better than you've ever seen yourself before. But when you go into therapy, understand you'll be heard, you'll be understood, and you're going to have a greater hope that your life will be better than it previously has been before.
Thank you so much. Dr. Johnson, tell us about culturally competent counselors and what they look like and what some of the students can look forward to. You muted.
I don't think I have much more to add than what Dr. Al said, but definitely someone that's culturally affirming and doesn't dismiss or ignore your intersectionality, your gender, race, affectional orientation, whatever it is that you bring to that session or to that appointment, to that meeting. You want to make sure that you have a therapist or a counselor who acknowledges every part of you as the whole, right? And not ignoring. any of it. And especially I think about Black males and Black women, but Black males who go to counseling, if someone minimizes or doesn't recognize or acknowledge what you may be experiencing as a Black man in America in 2022, that is problematic. That is extremely problematic. And sometimes you can pick up on that through the phone call, the initial consultation.
Absolutely.
And I would, I always tell my clients, like, finding a therapist is like finding someone to do your hair, do your nails, your barber, whatever. If you go and you don't like the service, you're not going back. So you're not obligated, right? Just because you reach out and schedule an appointment, you may go 2 or 3 or 4 times and decide, I'm not really feeling them. You know what? Find somebody else.
Gotcha. Yeah, I tell people all the time, screen your therapist, interview your therapist, give them a call, and find out what they're like, but definitely avoid those who are going to minimize who you are and the things that you're saying as if they are trivial, because they're only going to look at the situation from their lens and they're not willing to look at it and see what it looks like for them. So as we start wrapping up now to the last few minutes here with our webinar and our amazing guests, you guys are here. Can you tell us, Dr. Johnson, what type of counseling and what modalities do you use typically to help your clients?
So I typically practice from what we call a cognitive behavioral therapy approach. So it's more directive. I am of the belief that there's an intersection or relationship between our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs. And there's research that supports that if we can change any one of those, that we may be able to change how we think and how we view things and how we feel things. So CBT is an approach that I use, and I do a lot of grief work. So CBT works well. And longer in my practice, I am starting to integrate other therapeutic approaches, but CBT is probably the primary approach that I use.
Thank you. What about you, Dr. Al?
I primarily use solution focus.
So there's a goal, and you're trying to resolve.
It's really about the desired outcome of what you want, what I call the ideal life.
Gotcha. And trying to help your clients to reach that goal. Good. Thank you so much. So I don't see any questions in the chat. So we're going to start wrapping up. This has been wonderful. I want to give you guys an opportunity to tell the audience how can they contact you if they want to continue conversations with you, and any final words you have as we're wrapping up this topic on Black wellness and mental health for 2020 Black History Month. Dr. Al, would you like to go first? Any final thoughts, and how can the audience contact you?
You can find me on the Sutherlandcenter.com. You can kind of Google Dr. Alvin Sutherland Jr. It'll come up as well. And then you can connect to me on the website, and everything else will be right there as well. Looking forward to speaking to you. My final words is to mind your mind. And what I mean by mind your mind and live the dream that you want to have for your life is there's usually about 4 different ways information is fed into our mind. It's what our family and friends have tell us, it's what society tells us, and it's what we tell ourselves. And a lot of times we start saying to ourselves what our family and friends said to us. Maybe I am nothing. Maybe I am just like my mom. Maybe I am just like my dad. And we start to say these things to ourselves. However, whoever your God is, whoever your deity is, what your deity says to you should supersede what your family and friends and what society say. A lot of deities and gods I've heard, they say that you're fearfully and wonderfully made and you're the head and not the tail. And there's wonderful things about you. You're truly remarkable. If you can see it behind me, you truly are remarkable. So allow the words of encouragement, the great I am of who you are, to move you forward to live the life that you want to live.
Thank you so much. Dr. Johnson, tell us your final words or thoughts, and how can people contact you?
Right. My website is greaterlivingcounseling.com, and you can find my email address on there as well. And final thought is to take care of yourself, right? We've acknowledged earlier that some of us are not okay, and that's okay. Um, put yourself first. It's not selfish, right? You're doing it for the benefit of those that you love as well as for yourself. Um, Dr. Al talked about, messages that we've heard from people growing up and things that people have told us, and we start to internalize them and believe them. And that goes right into cognitive behavioral therapy. We call it stinking thinking. That, irrational thinking sometimes our distress and our dis-ease is a result of some of the things that we tell ourselves that are not true. And we don't have any evidence that it's true. So I'm hopeful that even if you're scared, if you've never been to counseling before, challenge yourself to find somebody, call and schedule an appointment. A lot of us are doing telehealth now. So you don't even have to go in to see anyone face to face. You can do it through video conferencing. But I challenge you, even if you just want to try it, right? Just to see if it's for you. Please, please, please take care of yourself, put yourself first, and give it a try.
All right, thank you, guys. So you have been watching a webinar on Black wellness and mental health, sponsored and brought to you by Life University in Marietta, Georgia, and the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I thank you guys and hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.